I never expected to hear from her again. Not after everything that happened, not after the way she tore my life apart and left me with nothing but questions and regrets. But here I was, staring at my phone screen, her name glowing like a ghost from the past. 5 years. 5 long years since I last heard her voice. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a pocket dial. Or maybe she'd changed her number and someone else was calling me by accident. But something inside me knew better. I could feel it in my chest, that strange, unshakable pull. The same one that had once drawn me to her before I knew what she was capable of. I should have let it ring. I should have ignored it. But against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? There was a pause, a breath, and then, hey. That single word sent a shockwave through me. It wasn't just the voice itself, but the way she said it, like she was afraid to speak, afraid of how I'd react, like she knew she had no right to be calling me, but did it anyway. I swallowed hard, gripping the phone tighter. Sheila? Another pause. Then, I didn't think you'd pick up. Neither did I. I stayed silent, waiting. She was the one who called. Let her be the one to explain herself. She took a shaky breath. I know I'm probably the last person you ever wanted to hear from, but I needed to talk to you. It's important. Important. That word twisted something in my gut. It was important. When she begged me to trust her all those years ago. It was important when she swore there was nothing going on behind my back. It was important when she destroyed our marriage in ways I never could have imagined. I leaned against the kitchen counter, exhaling slowly. I don't see what could be so important after all this time. Another breath on the other end of the line, then a quiet confession. I made a mistake. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. A mistake. She called 5 years too late to tell me something I had already known. Which one? I asked, my voice colder than I expected. You'll have to be more specific. She didn't respond right away, and for a second I thought she might hang up. But then, barely above a whisper, she said something that sent a chill down my spine. It's about us, about what really happened. The room felt smaller all of a sudden, the weight of old memories pressing down on me. I had spent years trying to bury the past, convincing myself that I had all the answers I needed. But now, doubt crept in. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She hesitated, then finally spoke. There are things you don't know. Things I never told you. I should have ended the call right then and there. I should have told her I didn't care, that I had moved on, that whatever secrets she was about to spill no longer had any power over me. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Because for the first time in 5 years, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure if I'd ever truly moved on at all. And worse, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. The silence between us stretched, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to end the call, to walk away from whatever mess she was about to drag me back into. But my fingers wouldn't move, my grip on the phone tightening as my mind raced. There are things you don't know, she had said. Things I don't know. I thought I knew everything. The lies, the betrayal, the way she so effortlessly shattered our life together. I had spent years convincing myself there was nothing left to uncover, just a tragic, humiliating chapter of my past that I had finally closed. But now, Sheila was here, pulling at the edges of that chapter, threatening to rip it open again. I exhaled sharply. If you've got something to say it. She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might change her mind. But then she spoke, and her words sent a chill down my spine. I never wanted you to find out the way you did. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. You mean by walking in on you? I didn't need to paint the picture in my head. It had been burned there for eternity. The hotel room. The sheets tangled around two bodies that weren't mine. The look of pure shock on her face when she saw me standing there. And the man beside her? His face still haunts me in ways I'll never admit. Sheila inhaled sharply. I know how it looked. How it looked? I cut in, my voice sharp. It looked exactly like what it was. She didn't argue. Maybe because she knew she had no defense. Or maybe because she knew I wouldn't believe a word she said anyway. But still, she pressed on. There were things happening back then that you didn't know about, she said softly. Things that had nothing to do with you. I scoffed. I think it had everything to do with me, Sheila. She went quiet for a moment, and I could hear the way her breath hitched, like she was holding back something she wasn't sure she should say. I was scared, she finally admitted. I was stupid, and I made choices I can never take back. I waited. If she was hoping for sympathy, she wasn't going to get it. She took another shaky breath. I need you to know the full story before it's too late. Something about the way she said that made my stomach twist. Too late, I repeated. Too late for what? Silence. Then, finally, in the smallest voice, I don't have much time. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What do you mean? I asked, my voice suddenly quieter. Sheila let out a slow, shaky sigh, like she was trying to find the right words. There's so much I need to tell you, she said, but I need to do it in person. I stiffened. That's not happening. I know you don't trust me, she said quickly, and I don't blame you. But please, Jason, just meet me. One time. After that, you'll never have to hear from me again. I should have said no. I wanted to say no. But the way she said it, the urgency, the quiet desperation, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper happening here, something I wasn't seeing. And against every ounce of better judgment I had, I found myself exhaling, rubbing a hand down my face. Where? A pause then, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. Our old spot. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. The second she said it, a flood of memories hit me like a truck. The coffee shop, the one where we used to sit for hours, talking about nothing and everything all at once. The place where I once thought our future was being written. The place that now felt like a graveyard of broken promises. I swallowed hard. Fine. Sheila let out a breath of relief. Thank you, Jason. I didn't respond. I just ended the call. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt something I thought I had buried a long time ago. Dread. Because no matter what she had to say tomorrow, I knew it was going to change everything. The next day dragged on, every hour feeling like a slow, agonizing countdown to a moment I wasn't sure I wanted to face. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of Carter's Cafe, the sky had already turned a deep shade of amber, the last traces of daylight sinking into the horizon. I sat there in my car for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the familiar brick building. The neon open sign flickered in the window, just like it had all those years ago. So much had changed, and yet it looked exactly the same. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. What the hell was I even doing here? 5 years. I had spent 5 years rebuilding myself after Sheila tore my world apart. 5 years convincing myself that I was finally free of her lies, her betrayals, her ghosts that haunted me every time I closed my eyes. And yet, here I was, waiting for the woman who had destroyed me. I should have driven away. I should have turned the key in the ignition and never looked back. But before I could make a decision, I saw her. Sheila. She was already inside, sitting in the corner booth, the one we always used to sit in. I wasn't sure what I expected to feel when I saw her again, but whatever it was, it didn't come. There was no rush of anger, no sudden, overwhelming heartbreak, just emptiness, like looking at a stranger I used to know. She looked different, not in an obvious way, but there was something in her face that wasn't there before. The once confident, almost smug air she carried had been replaced by something softer, something almost fragile. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The little bell above the door chimed, and for a second, it was like stepping back in time. The scent of coffee and cinnamon lingered in the air. The low hum of chatter filled the space, the occasional clink of mugs against ceramic plates. It was comforting, familiar, and yet completely foreign. Sheila looked up the second I walked in, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. I saw the way her breath hitched, the way she nervously tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the same way she used to when she was uncomfortable. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. Without a word, I walked over and sat down across from her. She opened her mouth to speak, but the waitress appeared at our table before she could get a word out. "Hey there, can I get you anything?" I didn't even look at the menu. "Black coffee." Sheila hesitated before glancing up. "Same." The waitress nodded and walked away. Then, silence. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of 5 years pressed between us like a wall, unspoken words filling the air. I leaned back against the booth, crossing my arms. "All right. You said there was something I needed to know. So, talk." Sheila exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around the napkin in her lap. "I never got a chance to explain," she said quietly. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Explain what? How you ended up in bed with another man? I think that part was pretty self-explanatory." She winced, looking down. "I wasn't happy, Jason." My jaw clenched. "Of course, the classic excuse. And that gave you the right to cheat?" I asked, my voice sharp. "No," she swallowed hard. "But there's more to it than you think." I narrowed my eyes, studying her. "Then get to the point." She hesitated. Then finally, she lifted her gaze to meet mine. I was pregnant. The words hit me like a freight train. For a moment, I was sure I had misheard her. "What?" My voice was barely above a whisper. Sheila's hands trembled as she gripped the napkin even tighter. When everything happened, I was pregnant, Jason." 1,000 thoughts raced through my head, each one colliding with the next, none of them making sense. Pregnant? She was pregnant. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "And the baby?" She looked down at the table, blinking rapidly as if trying to keep tears at bay. I lost it. The air left my lungs in a slow, silent exhale. I didn't know what to say. For 5 years, I had carried nothing but rage and resentment for this woman. I had cursed her name, wished I had never met her, sworn that I would never allow her to hurt me again. But now, sitting across from her, seeing the pain in her eyes, I felt something I hadn't expected, something dangerously close to sympathy. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to stay focused. This doesn't change what you did, I finally said. She nodded quickly, her fingers shaking. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed you to know. Silence fell between us again. I didn't know what to feel. But one thing was certain. This wasn't over. I stared at her, trying to process the weight of her words. Pregnant. Lost the baby. It was like a wrecking ball to my chest, but I refused to let it show. I had spent 5 years learning how to control my emotions when it came to her. And I wasn't about to lose that control now. The waitress returned, placing 2 cups of coffee on the table. I barely acknowledged her. Sheila wrapped her hands around her cup, her fingers trembling slightly. I cleared my throat, keeping my voice even. And you waited 5 years to tell me this? Why now? She let out a slow breath. Because there's more. Of course there was. She hesitated before continuing. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. I knew our marriage was already in trouble, and I didn't know what to do. I scoffed. So your solution was to cheat on me? Her face twisted with guilt. It wasn't like that. I leaned forward, my patience wearing thin. Then explain it to me, Sheila. Explain how sleeping with someone else fits into all of this. She swallowed hard, avoiding my gaze. It wasn't just about that night. It was everything leading up to it. I was scared, confused, and I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I exhaled sharply. You keep saying that, but you're not giving me anything real. She bit her lip, hesitating, and then, barely above a whisper, I don't know if the baby was yours. The air was sucked out of the room. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. My brain refused to register the words. What? Sheila looked like she wanted to disappear. I wasn't sure if it was yours or... I shot up from my seat so fast the table shook. You've got to be kidding me. People in the cafe turned to look, but I didn't care. My pulse pounded in my ears, my breath coming sharp and fast. 5 years. 5 years of believing I had all the answers, believing I had escaped the worst of it. And now she was telling me that there was an entirely new level to her betrayal. She wiped at her eyes quickly, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you, Jason. I was ashamed. I was afraid. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Afraid of what? That I'd finally see you for what you really were? She flinched, but I didn't care. I ran a hand down my face, trying to catch my breath, trying to think through the rage clawing at my chest. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Not only did you cheat, but you got pregnant. And you didn't even know if the baby was mine. And instead of telling me, instead of giving me the chance to process it, you let me walk away thinking I had the whole story. She nodded weakly. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. And now, I continued, my voice cold, after all these years, you suddenly decide I deserve to know the truth. What am I supposed to do with this information, Sheila, huh? What do you expect me to say? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her shoulders trembled as she stared down at her coffee cup, her breathing unsteady. I don't expect anything, she finally whispered. I needed you to know. Before it's too late. That again. I narrowed my eyes. You keep saying that. Too late for what? She hesitated as if debating whether to tell me, but then she exhaled shakily and met my gaze. I'm sick, Jason. The words landed like a dull thud in my chest. I didn't react at first. I just stared at her, trying to gauge if this was some kind of manipulation, some last-ditch effort to win sympathy. But she wasn't playing a game. Her hands shook as she wiped at her eyes, her breathing uneven. "I was diagnosed a year ago," she said softly. "It's not good." I swallowed, my emotions colliding in ways I wasn't prepared for. "What is it?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. She hesitated, then let out a weak chuckle. "Does it really matter?" I sat back down slowly, my mind a tangled mess of anger, confusion, and something I couldn't name. Sheila, my ex-wife, the woman who had wrecked my life, was dying. And somehow, even after everything, I didn't know how to feel about it. I sat there, staring at her, the weight of her confession pressing down on me like an invisible force. She's dying. I should have felt something. Grief, sympathy, maybe even closure. But all I felt was exhaustion. 5 years of anger, betrayal, and unanswered questions had built a wall between us. And now, just when I thought I was free of her, she was dragging me back into a past I had fought so hard to escape. I cleared my throat, forcing my voice to stay even. "How long?" Sheila swallowed. "They gave me a year, maybe less." I rubbed a hand down my face, trying to process the words. A year. Less than a year. It wasn't that I wanted her to suffer. I wasn't that kind of person. But after everything she put me through, after the way she had torn my life apart, I couldn't just flip a switch and pretend none of it mattered. I exhaled sharply. "And why tell me now? Why not reach out when you were first diagnosed?" Sheila hesitated, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "Because I was ashamed. I still am." I scoffed. "That's convenient." She flinched but nodded. I deserve that. For the first time since I sat down, I really looked at her. The dark circles under her eyes, the way her once vibrant skin looked paler, almost sickly. The slight tremor in her hands as she lifted her coffee to her lips. I hated what she did to me. But I wasn't blind. She really was sick. And despite everything, a part of me, the part that still remembered what it was like to love her, felt something close to pity. But pity wasn't enough to erase the past. I sat back in my chair, crossing my arms. "All right. You wanted me to know. Now I know. What do you expect me to do with this information?" She bit her lip, staring down at the table. "I don't know." I let out a bitter chuckle. "Well, that makes 2 of us." A tense silence fell between us. Then, after what felt like forever, she spoke again, this time her voice barely above a whisper. "I just don't want to die alone." I froze. That was it. That was why she'd called me. Not just to tell me the truth, not just to clear her conscience. She wanted something from me. I clenched my jaw, my chest tightening. "And you think I should be the one to fix that?" Sheila looked up, her eyes pleading. "Jason, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything from you. But you were the last person who really knew me." I shook my head, letting out a harsh laugh. "The last person who really knew you? You mean the man you lied to? The one you cheated on? The one you humiliated?" She swallowed hard, tears forming in her eyes. "I know." "No," I cut her off. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up after 5 years and expect me to play the role of your comfort. You chose this, Sheila. You made your decisions, and now you have to live with them." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I know." But that didn't stop her from asking. And it didn't stop me from feeling like the ground beneath me was shifting. I had spent years trying to erase her from my life, from my heart, and now she was standing in front of me, asking me to be there in her final days. The anger inside me was still burning, still raw. But beneath it, something else was beginning to creep in. A question I wasn't ready to answer. If I walked away now, would I regret it? The silence between us felt like a chasm, stretching wider with every passing second. Sheila sat across from me, tears brimming in her eyes, waiting, hoping for some kind of response. But what was I supposed to say? She wanted me to be there for her. The same woman who shattered my trust, who turned my life upside down, was now asking me to hold her hand as she faced the inevitable. And I had no idea what to do. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling sharply. You do realize how insane this sounds, right? She nodded, swallowing hard. I do. Then why ask me? She hesitated. Because no one else knows me the way you do. I scoffed. Maybe that was the problem. Sheila flinched, but I didn't take it back. The anger inside me hadn't faded. It was still there, simmering beneath the surface, a reminder of all the pain she'd caused. I had moved on. At least that's what I had told myself. But the truth was, I never really had. Not completely. Some scars don't fade with time. They just become part of you. Sheila wiped at her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. I don't want to go through this alone. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You didn't care about being alone when you were sneaking around behind my back. She let out a shaky breath. You're right. Her willingness to take the blame almost made this worse. I wanted her to fight back, to make excuses, to give me a reason to hate her again. But instead, she just sat there, accepting everything I threw at her. It made it harder to walk away. I looked down at my hands, flexing my fingers against the cool surface of the table. This wasn't just about her. It was about me, too. If I walked away now, would I regret it? Would I always wonder what she had left to say? Would I feel guilty knowing that I had a chance to be the bigger person and refused? I clenched my jaw, staring at my reflection in the dark surface of my coffee. I didn't owe her anything. But maybe I owed it to myself to hear her out. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I exhaled and met her gaze. I'll think about it. Sheila blinked, surprised. You will? Think about it, I emphasized. That's all I'm promising. Relief flickered across her face, but I wasn't about to make this easy for her. I grabbed my wallet, tossing a few bills on the table before standing up. If I decide to walk away, you don't call me again. You don't try to guilt me into this. You let me go for good this time. She nodded quickly, wiping away another tear. Okay. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked out of the cafe, my heart pounding in my chest. The night air hit me like a slap, but it did nothing to clear my head. I had spent years hating her. And now, for the first time, I wasn't sure if I still did. I wasn't sure if that made me weak or if it meant I was finally ready to face the truth. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Sheila had said. I had spent 5 years convincing myself that she was nothing more than a bad chapter in my life, a mistake I had long since left behind. But now, that chapter had been cracked open again, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to read. The worst part? I didn't know if I wanted to. By morning, my exhaustion was a weight on my chest. But my mind was no clearer. I went through the motions of my day, showered, got dressed, made coffee. But everything felt distant, like I was on autopilot. Then my phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked. Sheila. I know I said I wouldn't push, but please, if you want to talk, I'll be at the park today. If not, I understand. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could ignore it, block her number, pretend none of this ever happened, and move on with my life. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself gripping my keys and walking out the door. The park was nearly empty when I arrived. A few joggers, an elderly couple feeding birds, a mother pushing a stroller. And then there was Sheila, sitting on a bench near the pond, bundled up in a sweater that looked too big for her. She looked smaller than I remembered. She spotted me before I could turn back, offering a hesitant smile as I approached. You came. I shoved my hands into my jacket pockets, still deciding if that was a mistake. She nodded, as if she understood. I won't take much of your time. There's something else I need to say. I sighed, sitting down at the far end of the bench. Then say it. Sheila inhaled deeply, staring out at the water. I wasn't in love with him. I stiffened. I thought I was, she continued. Or maybe I just wanted to be. But the truth is, I was running from something, and I ran straight into the worst decision of my life. I clenched my jaw. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, she insisted. Because I don't want you thinking that I threw everything away for some grand love affair. I didn't. I was broken, Jason. And instead of fixing myself, I destroyed us. I exhaled, my grip tightening on my knees. And that's supposed to make me feel better? She shook her head. Number nothing will make this better. But I need you to know that it was never about you not being enough. It was about me being too much of a coward to admit that I was drowning. I stared at the rippling water, letting her words sink in. I had spent so many years hating her, believing that she had chosen to betray me because I wasn't good enough, that I had failed in some way. But now, for the first time, I saw the cracks in her story, the parts she had hidden even from herself. She had been drowning, and instead of reaching for me, she had reached for someone else. It didn't excuse what she did, but maybe, just maybe, it explained it. Sheila let out a shaky breath. I don't expect forgiveness, Jason. I don't even expect you to stay. I needed you to hear me. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure what to say. So instead, I did something I never thought I would. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and set it on the bench beside her. She frowned. What's this? I stood up, shoving my hands back into my pockets. A number, for a woman I know. She's a nurse who helps people in your situation. Sheila's eyes widened slightly. I haven't made any decisions. I cut in quickly. I don't know what I want to do, but if I walk away, I don't want to do it knowing you have no one. She swallowed hard, gripping the paper like it was the most precious thing in the world. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded once, then turned to leave. As I walked away, I realized something. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't leaving with anger in my heart. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not yet. I didn't go back to see Sheila for a while. I told myself I needed time to process, time to breathe, time to figure out if I even wanted to be part of her life again, especially now when her days were numbered. But even as I tried to go back to my normal routine, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The anger that had once defined our past no longer consumed me. The pain was still there, but it wasn't suffocating anymore. And to my own surprise, I found myself thinking about her, wondering if she was okay, wondering if she was alone. And that's what finally made my decision for me. 3 weeks later, I knocked on her door. She looked surprised to see me, her eyes wide as if she had already made peace with the idea that I wouldn't come back. "Jason," she breathed, standing in the doorway. "You ... "I thought about it," I interrupted, rubbing the back of my neck. "About what you asked." She swallowed hard, waiting. I took a deep breath. I don't know if I can ever forgive what happened between us. And I don't know if I'll ever look at you the way I used to. But I also don't want to live with regrets. And I don't want you to go through this alone. Tears swelled up in her eyes. "You don't have to do this." "I know," I said, "but I'm choosing to." For the first time in a long time, I saw something in her expression that I hadn't seen in years. Relief, not just because I had come back, but because in some way we had both found a way to put the past behind us. Not by forgetting, not by erasing, but by accepting. The months that followed weren't easy. There were days when I felt like walking away. Days when old wounds resurfaced, when I questioned why I had made the choice to stay. But there were also moments of unexpected warmth. Quiet conversations over tea, laughter at old memories, even moments of peace. Moments where just for a second, it felt like we were two people who had once loved each other, not two people torn apart by betrayal. Sheila fought hard, but eventually, the illness took its toll. And when she finally slipped away, she wasn't alone. I was there, holding her hand, and as much as I had hated her once, as much as I had sworn I would never be part of her life again, I was grateful I had been there in the end. Because despite everything, she had been a part of my life. And now, as I stood by her grave, looking at the name of the woman who had broken me and, in some strange way, helped me heal again, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was free. And maybe, just maybe, that was the closure I had been searching for all along. Life has a strange way of bringing things full circle. I never imagined that I'd be sitting at Sheila's bedside, holding her hand as she drifted in and out of sleep. I never imagined I'd be the one to help her through her final days. But somehow, despite everything, I was here. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel weighed down by anger or resentment. Sheila and I talked a lot in those last few weeks, not about the past, not in a way that reopened wounds, but about life, about the people we had become, about the things we had learned. And through it all, I came to realize something. Forgiveness isn't about excusing the past. It's about choosing to let go so it doesn't control your future. I had been holding on to my pain for so long that I hadn't realized it was keeping me trapped. But in those quiet moments, as I watched Sheila fight her battle with dignity and grace, something inside me shifted. I let go. Not for her, for me. When Sheila passed, I expected to feel empty. But instead, I felt light, as if a weight I had been carrying for far too long had finally lifted. I didn't leave her funeral with sadness. I left with gratitude. Gratitude that despite everything, I had found peace. Gratitude that I had been given a second chance, not to fix the past, but to move forward without it holding me back. And most importantly, gratitude that I was still here, still standing, still ready to start over. A year later, I found myself sitting in a familiar cafe, Carter's Cafe, the same place where Sheila had first asked me to listen. Only this time, I wasn't there to look back. I was there to look forward. As I sipped my coffee, I glanced up and met the eyes of a woman sitting across the room. She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something stir inside me, something I thought had been lost forever. Hope. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. Sviazane, what evidence did Sheila offer about the pregnancy's paternity? How did Jason react when she said she was terminally ill? What new secrets did Sheila reveal beyond the affair? Could Jason